Hi there, my name is Steve Piercey. I'm originally from a town called Corner Brook on the west coast of Newfoundland, and I currently live in St. John's, Newfoundland and Labrador. I'm trained as a geologist and currently a professor at Memorial University in Earth Sciences. And I really got interested in geology in my last year of high school. So I was always interested in science when I grew up, and I also had a parallel interest in being outdoors. So I really like to be outdoors and in the wilderness and in the woods and so on and so forth. And in my last year, I took a course in geology, and it merged my interest in being outdoors all the time as well as my interest in science. And I realized that this was the might have been the path for me. And so it ended up with me taking this course at university in first year. And after my high school experience and a fantastic first year professor, coupled with an opportunity to work after my first year in the field, it really sent me on the career path that I'm on right now. So what does my job involve? It really involves a couple of things. So one of the main tasks that I do as a university professor is teach students. So I teach students that are doing undergrad, Bachelor of Science degrees in Earth Sciences. So I teach them a variety of courses. And I also teach graduate students, students that are doing masters and PhDs. And I supervise a number of these students in doing research projects where they do a project and then write a thesis about that research. I also do my own individual research and manage a research program, so that involves things like doing lab work, field work, and raising money to do the research. I also contribute to things like running my department and various committees within the university, so things like hiring people and getting involved with safety things and so on. And then I also am involved with public outreach, where I talk to various groups and various community groups and various partners and so on about geology, geoscience, and earth sciences and how it actually impacts their daily lives. So what does a day in the life look like for me? Well, that really depends on the time of year. So between September and the end of April, that's usually term time, so the fall and winter semesters where I spend a lot of my time teaching. I spend most of my time around the university interacting with students, mentoring my own graduate students in lab methods and writing up their research and their theses. I contribute to administration, and I also spend a lot of time collecting my own data, writing up that data, analyzing it, writing research grants and applications for money to do research. And then I just contribute to the general overall research environment, teaching as well as administration at the university. During the summer times and the times when we can actually get into the field in various parts in the country and elsewhere, my students and I would spend quite a bit of time doing field work, looking at rocks in the field, in various locations, either in the woods itself or using things like drill core for mineral exploration and mining projects. This kind of work on a daily basis, what would happen is we'd actually get up in the morning, you'd have breakfast, you'd spend a day out in the field looking at rocks. At the end of the day, you would come home and document the samples that you've collected. Sometimes you may take measurements for things like density of the rocks. Sometimes we use a handheld spectrometer to figure out various minerals that are present in the field. And after we do that, that often will be in stints depending on where we are in the country. That could be, for example, a week, a couple weeks. There have been other cases where I've been gone for 2 months. And so it really depends on the time of year. So during the normal semester, it'd be mostly teaching and doing research and interacting with students. During the summers and so on, I spend quite a bit of time in the field with my students and everything, teaching them how to do field work and collecting the field-based data that's needed for the research. Okay, so STEM and what I do as a researcher, kind of things that my group has come up with over the years. STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, these are things we do on a daily basis. My work, I say sometimes that it's like being in Star Wars. We go to really remote locations and interesting places, and we use things like lasers and electron guns and ion guns to figure out things about how the world works. From a broader perspective, what I'm really interested in is how do mountain belts form through the evolution of the planet's history, as well as the mineral deposits that are found within those mountain belts. The work that we do will involve things like going in the field, we collect rocks, we do chemistry, we look at the minerals, we evaluate how old these rocks are, and we use the combinations of things like chemistry, physics, mathematical modeling, computer models, and then we use these things to try and understand how the Earth evolved. My group itself works a lot on how do we, what is the relationship between undersea volcanoes and metal deposits, these things what we call volcanogenic massive sulfides. You've probably heard of black smokers on the seafloor. These are ancient examples of them. And my group is really interested in how mountain belt formation, magmas that form on the seafloor, hot water that interacts with things, biological organisms and so on, and how all these various things interact to form metal deposits. And so that's blue sky scientific research, but a lot of my work is also in how do we use various techniques. So using chemistry of minerals and rocks, how do we use things like computer models and various techniques, lab-based techniques, things like infrared spectroscopy and scanning electron microscopes, and how can we use these techniques to be more efficient at mineral exploration to find more metal resources that we need for society, and how do we do that in an environmentally and socially and culturally responsible way. So a lot of my work verges between the science and doing science for the sake of science, but then also how do we use this to train people and then find the things that we need to have modern societies and live sustainably. What are the pros and cons of my profession? I think the main pro of my job is that I deal with really smart people every day. I deal with smart students that are young, enthusiastic, they have great ideas, they constantly expose me to new ways of thinking about things, new music, new approaches, and because of that, it keeps you young, and that's fantastic. The second part is that besides having to teach classes and administrative stuff, most of my days I get to choose what I want to do. I get to choose the research directions that my group and I go in, and I have an immense amount of freedom to do what I really want to do. And I think that that's those two things, dealing with really smart young people and smart people in general, students in general that are really intelligent, as well as the freedom to explore interesting ideas. Those are the main pros of my jobs. The cons are, to do this, you actually have to fill out a lot of paperwork, and you're constantly putting in applications for research funding and so on. And in many cases, you spend a lot of time managing and raising money to do the interesting work. And I wish I didn't spend as much time at that, and I spent more time on the science, but those are the unfortunate negatives of this kind of job, and it's kind of part of the job description. So while it's a con, it's an essential part of what I have to do. So you just, as long as you have more days doing the fun stuff, the cons are just things you just have to deal with. Okay, so what was my educational pathway? I mentioned earlier that I had done a geology course in high school. And when I was in high school, I did a lot of science classes, so chemistry, physics, math, statistics, and geology, biology. And after that, I did an undergraduate, a Bachelor of Science Honors at Memorial University. And I spent 4 years doing that. After I finished that, I stayed around at Memorial for another 2 years and did a master's degree where I looked at nickel and copper deposits associated with some interesting rocks called anorthosites in Nunatsiavut in Labrador. And following my master's degree, I left and I did a PhD for 3 years at the University of British Columbia. And I was really fortunate to live in Vancouver for 3 years in the late 90s, early 2000s. And I did a project on undersea volcanic rocks that are about 350 million years old in the Yukon. And I've been working in Yukon and elsewhere in the north ever since. I really had a great experience out there as part of my PhD. And then following that, I spent a number of years at Laurentian University from 2001 to 2007 in Sudbury, Ontario as a professor there. Spent a couple of years after that from 2007 to 2009 as a mineral exploration consultant in the private sector. And then since 2009, I've been here at Memorial University as a professor here. Okay, what are the best and the worst parts of the journey? So the best parts of the journey, without a doubt, have been people and traveling and seeing various different parts of the world. as part of my job, I've got to work in and travel to every province and territory, almost every province and territory in the country. I've traveled to every one of them in the country, and I've worked in at least 9, I think, or 10 of them as well, including all over northern Canada, which has been fantastic. I've been all in various places in the world doing research and interacting with researchers, including places like Japan, throughout South America, New Zealand, Australia, Europe, etc. So it's been really fantastic. That aspect of my job has been wonderful. But I'd argue that probably the best part of it is actually the people that I've met on that journey, from the students that I've had here at Memorial, through to the people that I've interacted with through research partnerships and collaborations. It's led to long-term friendships that started off really on a professional level and developed into wonderful friendships that I have for decades now. And to me, the people that I've met along this journey have been really the most positive and my favorite part of my career so far. When it comes to negative, as part of travel, unfortunately, you're away from your family. And so I would argue that was one of the cons, unfortunately, is I was away from my wife and my children for a lot of the research that I've done. And that's unfortunate. It's a consequence of the job that I take on, but I always appreciate the opportunity to come home after doing that research. So being away is a con, and getting to come home is a real pro on that journey. Advice to students. Okay, I would suggest read and be curious. Enjoy the opportunity to learn. I think in terms of what you want to do, just find something that you like to do and dedicate yourself to it. It doesn't matter what it is. I'm a scientist, and I found something that I really liked, and I threw myself into it, and I spent the time becoming good at it. And along that journey, though, find someone that is good at that area that you're interested in and get them to mentor you and help you along on that pathway. So finding something you like to do will make your days working and studying or whatever much easier. And find someone who's going to help you get along that pathway. And advice to myself as a school-age student, spend more time with the people that you really like. People are really, really good. Never assume that someone is always going to be around. And the other part is, don't sweat the small stuff. Don't focus on the little things, focus on the big things, and don't get caught up in the small things. So that would be my advice to me. It's taken me a long time to learn the importance of those two things, and I'm almost 50 now, and I'm starting to figure it out finally. And finally, if anyone's interested on more information on the stuff that I presented here, or information on earth sciences, careers in geoscience, or even just the transition of moving away from home and going to university and balancing those things, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. And I'm happy to chat with people on via Zoom or any other mechanism that works for you. So thanks again, and I wish you the best.